she is back, despite being rejected by the American electorate in 2 separate presidential contests. Hillary Clinton is looking to reestablish herself in politics. First off, she publicly blamed James Comey and the media for her defeat, thereby sending the message to loyalists that she didn't really lose at all.
I was on the way to winning until the combination of Jim Comey's letter on October 28th and Russian WikiLeaks raised doubts in the minds of people who were inclined to vote for me but got scared off.
Well, her countless fans in the media, including the one you saw interviewing her in that last clip, lapped this up and cheered on her return to the scene.
I found this to be perhaps the most astonishing Hillary Clinton appearance I've ever seen. It was perhaps her at her most authentic.
I think what Jim Comey did was to throw overboard Justice Department procedures because of political reasons, his own internal politics because of the hatred for Hillary Clinton within the FBI.
20% of people voted because of racism. And I think after 8 years of a black president, there was no way that this woman was going to win.
They live in an irony-free world. All that gushing, but it's not surprising if you've been following it. Remember any of these New York Times headlines from the days right before the election? On the Hillary side, here's one. Hillary Clinton sees ugliness and joy in race's closing days. And this, big names campaigning for Hillary Clinton underscore Donald Trump's isolation. Yeah, he could never win. For Trump, how about this one? Donald Trump's moments and missteps, a look back, or black voters aghast at Trump find a place of food and comfort. But wait, didn't Trump get a higher percentage of the African-American vote than Mitt Romney did? So maybe the press didn't actually know what they were talking about. Maybe they still don't. Either way, it's hard to argue they were rooting for Donald Trump to become president, and yet many Hillary fans disagree with that. Peter Dow, for example, was an advisor to Hillary's 2008 presidential campaign, and he joins us tonight. Peter, thanks a lot for coming on.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I don't doubt that the Comey announcement had an effect on the election. I thought that at the time. But the press was foursquare for Hillary Clinton from the moment Donald Trump got the nomination. They didn't hide it at all. And the emails that were leaked from John Podesta's Gmail account proved they were collaborating with the Hillary campaign. So there's not really much of an argument to make, do you think, that the press was on Trump's side?
Look, a conservative is going to say that the mainstream media was against Donald Trump, President Trump, and liberals, progressives, Democrats are going to say that they were against Hillary Clinton. The fact is there have been independent studies that were done. Harvard Shorenstein Center did one. And look, both candidates got very bad press. You know, candidate Trump got terrible press, and Hillary Clinton got very bad press. One thing that was profoundly different, though, on the email story specifically, we counted 600 days out of research team, 600 consecutive days of coverage that far, far outweighed any coverage of any other Trump story.
So where was that? Where was that coverage? Was that in the New York Times and the Washington Post? Oh no, it wasn't. It was no, it wasn't. I ran one of those news organizations at the time, and it was not in the. No, that's not true. Well, New York Times did not run 600 days of email stories.
Well, Gallup actually, Tucker, Gallup had an analysis that said that the only thing that voters heard when they heard Hillary Clinton's name was email.
Yeah,
there was a word cloud where the word email was larger than every single other word. So. Yeah. Look, the email story dominated coverage from the very beginning. It was something that she made a mistake, and she apologized
on the right. On the right, it did, but not in the New York Times, not in the Washington Post. Instead, the New York Times wrote pieces like this. Here's a piece by Michael Barbero, 3 days before the election. Hillary Clinton at a campaign rally, and I'm quoting this now. This is like a prose poem. It's erotic in its intensity. Quote, her arms thrust skyward, one after another, in what starts to feel like a dance. There's an unfamiliar sense of abandon and joy. The rain grows heavier. Her wet clothes turn a shade darker. She cracks a wide smile. She takes in the scene around her and laughs before she finishes her sentence. I could go on, but I'm feeling creepy about it. Meanwhile, same day, I won't go on, but the headline in the Times was, thin line splits Donald Trump's politics and business. Trump is a villain, Hillary is a hero. That was a storyline in every major media organization in America. You were there.
I dispute that completely. Look, you can cherry pick stories that were positive for her or negative against him. Look, at the end of the day, the overall narrative in the mainstream media, and my issue has been with the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other networks. There was analysis done of the major network coverage, the 3 nightly news coverage, 6-to-1 ratio of email coverage over her policies. So how can voters decide? Look, Donald Trump won the election. He's a legitimate president. I've always said that. This is not about having Hillary Clinton become president. This is about telling the truth of what happened.
Okay.
Let me just say this, Tucker.
I mean, these independent studies are done by political hacks posing as journalists. The Shorenstein Center. I mean, I am a journalist. I sort of know the people who work there, and you're not going to tell me, because again, I know them, that they're politically independent, because they're not. They were as horrified as Martha Raddatz was when she cried on television at Trump's victory.
Well,
these people don't like Trump. I mean, that's true.
Well, let me give you a narrative, sort of a framework that tied through everything, and a lot of people fell into this trap. I think it was the basic narrative of the race, that Donald Trump was somehow this terribly weak candidate. You know, he came down that escalator, everybody was mocking him, laughing at him. Actually, I tweeted the next day, take this guy seriously. So from the very beginning,
well, you were a lot smarter than most on that. I mean, you're right. I think you're absolutely right there. He was not taken seriously at first by the press. They liked him because they thought it was a sideshow, it was interesting, and he divided a pretty strong Republican field. But when it became clear that he had some remote chance of winning, I mean, they piled on. Look, the guys who covered this campaign for the New York Times, for example, we don't need to guess what they thought. They wrote it. This is right after the election. Michael Barbero, who covered this as a New York Times reporter, quote, "We had fearless journalism throughout 2016. Voters wanted what they wanted." In other words, we tried our best to keep this guy from becoming president. They voted for him anyway. Like,
but
is it clear?
I don't want to litigate, Mike Barbero, New York Times. But what I was going to finish my point on the coverage is that the premise was he was such a terrible candidate that if Hillary Clinton didn't win by 20 points, she's somehow a total failure and should go away and do an apology tour. The fact is, he eviscerated a field of 17 Republicans. This guy was very tough to beat. And the fact that Hillary Clinton made history, this is a country based on fairness. We celebrate the people who have had great accomplishments. Hillary Clinton was the first woman ever in American history to win the nomination. And now you have people yelling at her, go away, shut up, apologize. As far as I'm concerned, it was a contest of two very strong candidates. They both made mistakes. And at the end of the day, he became the president through our Constitution. He's the president based on our Constitution.
Okay, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. It grates to hear the press described as anything but what they were, which was much more in favor of Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump. They are horrified by Trump. He doesn't like them either, by the way. He attacks them directly, and they take it personally. But they really wanted her to win. They may not have liked her personally. I don't think a lot of them did. But they wanted her to win. That's just true.
Look, it's what you're stating. I see it the exact opposite. As I say, that 6-to-1 study of emails over issues. I mean, the playing field was tilted against her unfairly. And again, this is not about relitigating. This is about just telling the truth. Hillary Clinton did not face a fair playing field, Tucker. That's just a fact.
It's so interesting. I was at the newspaper in Arkansas 25 years ago, so I've watched the Clintons carefully for a long time. Have you noticed a continuity of storyline here? Like, they always make the case. Her husband does the same. We're being treated unfairly. We're the victims of some kind of bias. People are mean to us for reasons we can't explain. Have you noticed this? They always say.
I wasn't there, so I'm talking about this particular election that I covered very carefully. And the fact is, there were two candidates under investigation, but the public only thought one was. And again, as I say, two formidable candidates fighting one another. One ended up being president, but the playing field was not level for Hillary Clinton.
Okay, just in point of fact, I don't think we even know at this date right now that Donald Trump has been the subject of an FBI investigation, but his campaign and the people around him. Do we know something different from that?
I'm just saying what I've heard from FBI Director Comey in his testimony and what the intelligence community has said. I don't know anything more than what I've heard publicly. But from what we've heard publicly, there was confirmation that there's an investigation. And look,
on him personally, I don't know if that's true.
I've also tweeted that I don't think it's going to take him down, as many people, I think, on the Democratic side believe.
Yeah, well, they should listen to you, Peter. Thanks a lot for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, Dave Weigel is a politics reporter at the Washington Post, which implies a lot of things, including that he's likely not a fan of this show. And indeed, he is not, judging by his reaction to an interview we did on Wednesday night. Ben Smith, the editor of BuzzFeed, came on, you might remember, and we had a vigorous discussion about liberal groupthink in the press. We disagreed with each other, but I wasn't hostile. I enjoyed it, actually, and I think Smith enjoyed it, too. Weigel definitely did not enjoy it. Too many different opinions on display, including some he doesn't agree with, and that shouldn't be allowed. So like the D.C. journalist he is, Weigel immediately started whining about it on Twitter. Why does Ben Smith keep diving into this endless pool of bad faith, he tweeted. Keeping Smith in mind that Smith has been on the show exactly 2 times, and both times we asked him pretty straightforward questions and gave him time to answer those questions. That's called legitimate debate. But to a Washington Post reporter, someone who lives in a world where every single person has identical views of everything, all of them fashionable, all of them unquestioned, that looks like bad faith to him. So naturally, we invited Weigel on to come on tonight and explain himself. I emailed him this morning. He wrote back to say he couldn't do it. He was planning to watch a movie. Now, two obvious points here. First, diversity means difference. Guys like Weigel love diversity when it means people who look different, but a diversity of views, that is terrifying to them. It's a threat to the moral monopoly they believe they hold in American life. It suggests that people who aren't evil or stupid might have come to different conclusions from the ones they came to and may even have a valid point. That possibility is unacceptable to them. It shakes their faith in their own virtue. And so they bat it away with name-calling. They always do. Bad faith, fascism, basket of deplorables, whatever. You've heard it all before. They're going to keep saying it until you shut up because, of course, that's the point of saying it in the first place. And the second point here, it takes a lot for liberals to come on this show. Thanks to people like Weigel, there's a lot of peer pressure not to come on. And they know that when they do come on, it won't be fluffy. They're going to have to answer the question. But night after night, some of them come anyway, and we are grateful for that. They may be wrong or misguided, but at least they're not cowards.